Chapter 1: The Farmer's Routine. Santiago was a farmer of humble means, yet he carried himself with a quiet dignity that reflected his dedication to his work. He lived in a quaint village nestled in the rolling hills of 15th-century Spain, where cobblestone streets wound through rows of clay-roofed cottages. The landscape was idyllic, with golden fields of wheat swaying in the breeze and vineyards sprawling across the hillsides. Despite the beauty surrounding him, Santiago's world revolved around a small chicken coop at the edge of his modest home. The coop was the heart of Santiago's livelihood. Each morning, as the first rays of sunlight crept over the horizon, he would awaken to the sound of roosters crowing. The rhythmic clucking of hens was a comforting melody that accompanied his daily tasks. Santiago took pride in the care he gave his chickens, feeding them a mixture of grain and scraps from his kitchen. He believed that happy, well-fed hens laid the best eggs, and his reputation in the village market attested to this. After gathering the eggs each morning, Santiago carefully inspected them for cracks or imperfections. The eggs, large and pristine with creamy shells, were a source of pride for the farmer. His customers often praised their quality, and he saw them as a testament to his hard work and dedication. Once the eggs were collected, Santiago placed them gently into a single woven basket, a family heirloom passed down from his grandfather. The basket was intricately crafted, with a sturdy handle and a design that told of generations of craftsmanship. To Santiago, it was not just a tool, but a symbol of continuity and tradition. The long walk to the market. Santiago's journey to the market was both a ritual and a necessity. The path wound through the countryside, crossing meadows dotted with wildflowers and groves of olive trees. It was a route Santiago knew by heart, each twist and turn as familiar to him as the lines on his weathered hands. He enjoyed the solitude of the walk, using the time to reflect on his life and the world around him. As he walked, he would often pass other villagers, shepherds leading flocks of sheep, farmers driving carts laden with produce, and children chasing each other along the dusty paths. They greeted him warmly, calling out, "Buenos dias, Santiago." He would nod and smile, always polite but reserved, his thoughts focused on the day ahead. Reaching the market was a moment of anticipation. The square, alive with color and sound, bustled with merchants hawking their goods, buyers bargaining for the best prices, and the aroma of fresh bread and roasted chestnuts wafting through the air. Santiago's eggs were a sought-after commodity, and he had regular customers who would flock to his stall as soon as he arrived. Despite his simple lifestyle, Santiago felt a deep satisfaction in knowing that his work was valued. The strength of the basket. The basket, as much a part of Santiago's routine as the walk itself, was a source of both practicality and sentimentality. It had been crafted by his grandfather, a skilled weaver who had taught Santiago the importance of patience and precision. The basket had carried many things over the years, fruits, vegetables, and now eggs, but Santiago had never once considered replacing it. "Why fix what isn't broken?" he would say whenever someone suggested a newer, larger basket. To him, the old basket was a metaphor for his life, dependable, unchanging, and rooted in tradition. He had always placed all his eggs in it, trusting in its strength and his own careful steps to keep them safe. Yet, Santiago was not blind to the fragility of his livelihood. He often overheard merchants at the market lamenting the unpredictable economy. Crops failed, buyers dwindled, and unexpected accidents could disrupt even the best-laid plans. While these stories made him uneasy, he pushed such thoughts aside, convincing himself that he was immune to misfortune. After all, he had always managed to make ends meet. A lingering unease. Despite his outward confidence, a faint unease gnawed at the edges of Santiago's mind. He had heard tales of farmers losing everything in a single moment, a storm flooding their fields, a fire consuming their barns, or a simple misstep leading to disaster. Santiago's life was precariously balanced on the success of his daily routine, and deep down, he knew it. One evening, as he sat by the fire in his modest home, Santiago found himself staring at the basket. It was sturdy, yes, but what if one day it failed him? He tried to shake off the thought, chiding himself for being pessimistic. His life had been stable so far, and he believed it would continue to be. Luck and consistency had carried him this far, and he saw no reason for that to change. The comfort of familiarity. Santiago clung to his routine because it was familiar, and familiarity was comforting. He knew the exact number of eggs his hens would lay each day, the weight of the basket in his hand, and the time it took to walk to the market. There was a rhythm to his life, a steady cadence that gave him a sense of control in an unpredictable world. Still, there were moments when the unpredictability of life would cast a shadow over his thoughts. What if his hen stopped laying? What if fewer buyers came to the market? These were questions Santiago tried to ignore, burying them under the comforting rituals of his day-to-day life. Little did he know, the stability he had come to rely on would soon be tested in a way he never anticipated. The routine he cherished, the basket he trusted, and the life he had built, everything would be called into question. Santiago was about to learn a lesson that would not only change his approach to farming but also echo through the generations as a timeless piece of wisdom. Chapter 2: The Fall. The morning dawned crisp and serene, the kind of day Santiago loved for its promise of a fruitful market. The air was fresh, carrying hints of dew and the faint aroma of baking bread from the village ovens. Santiago felt a rare sense of optimism as he prepared his basket. The hens had been particularly productive, and his haul of eggs was larger than usual. Carefully placing each one into the woven basket, he marveled at their smooth shells and imagined the coins they would bring by day's end. Santiago's steps were brisk as he set off down the familiar path. The sun was climbing higher, bathing the village in a golden light that seemed to make everything sparkle. Santiago hummed an old tune, his basket swinging gently in rhythm with his stride. His heart was light, filled with thoughts of a successful day at the market. The bustling market square. As Santiago approached the market, the once quiet streets gave way to the lively sounds of the square. Merchants called out their wares, the scent of roasted chestnuts mingled with the tang of freshly caught fish, and children wove through the crowd with carefree laughter. The square was alive, a vibrant tapestry of colors, sounds, and smells that reminded Santiago of why he loved this village. He maneuvered through the bustling crowd with ease, nodding to familiar faces. "Buenos dias, Santiago," called a baker, waving a flour-dusted hand. Santiago smiled, the anticipation of a good day lifting his spirits even higher. The weight of the basket in his hand felt like a tangible symbol of his hard work and dedication. The sudden commotion. Just as Santiago neared his usual spot in the market, a commotion broke out at the far end of the square. A loud shout pierced the air, followed by the clattering of wheels. Santiago turned his head to see a runaway cart hurtling down the cobblestone street. Its driver, a young man with wide, panicked eyes, was shouting warnings and struggling to regain control. The cart was moving fast, its wooden wheels bouncing dangerously on the uneven stones. People scattered, scrambling to avoid its path. For a moment, Santiago froze, his mind racing as he calculated his next move. The cart veered closer, its path unpredictable. Santiago took a hurried step back to avoid it, but in his haste, his foot caught on a loose cobblestone. Time seemed to slow as Santiago stumbled. The woven basket slipped from his grasp, arcing through the air before crashing to the ground with a sickening thud. The fragile eggs inside met the unforgiving cobblestones, shattering instantly. Yolks and shells splattered in a chaotic mess, a golden pool spreading across the street. A collective gasp. The sound of the crash drew the attention of nearby onlookers. Conversation ceased, and a collective gasp rippled through the crowd as they turned to see the source of the commotion. Santiago stood frozen, his eyes fixed on the mess before him. It was as if the world had stopped. His heart sank, a heavy weight settling in his chest as the reality of the situation dawned on him. All his hard work, all the care he had taken that morning, had been reduced to a pile of broken shells and sticky yolk. Without eggs to sell, he faced not only the loss of income but also the humiliation of his failure. Santiago felt the sting of shame as whispers began to circulate among the crowd. "Such a shame," muttered a woman nearby. "He should have been more careful," added another. Santiago's cheeks burned as he bent down, trying to salvage what little dignity he had left. The basket, though battered, was intact, but it offered little solace in the face of such loss. A voice of wisdom. As Santiago began to collect the pieces of his broken pride, an elderly merchant approached him. The man was a familiar figure in the market, known for his calm demeanor and years of experience. His gray hair framed a kind face, and his eyes held a glimmer of understanding. He placed a reassuring hand on Santiago's shoulder. "Ah, young man," the merchant said gently, his voice carrying a tone of wisdom that immediately drew Santiago's attention. "I see this is a hard day for you. But take heart, for every fall is an opportunity to learn." Santiago looked up, his frustration and embarrassment evident. "What lesson could there be in this?" he asked, his voice tinged with bitterness. "All my work is gone in an instant." The merchant chuckled softly, his smile never wavering. "This is a lesson we all learn at some point," he replied. "Next time, divide your eggs among several baskets. That way, even if one falls, the others will be safe. It is not only about eggs, my friend. It is about life itself. Never put all your hope, effort, or trust into one thing alone. Diversify, and you will find resilience in the face of misfortune." A seed of reflection. The merchant's words lingered in Santiago's mind long after the crowd dispersed and the market returned to its bustling rhythm. He watched as the elderly man walked away, his presence as steady and grounded as his advice. Santiago's initial frustration began to give way to a sense of introspection. He thought about his reliance on the single basket and how he had never considered another way. The basket had always been enough, until it wasn't. Santiago realized that his predicament could have been avoided if he had simply prepared for the possibility of failure. The idea of dividing his eggs among several baskets seemed so obvious now, and yet it had never occurred to him before. As he gathered the broken remnants of his haul and turned to make the walk back home, Santiago felt a strange mixture of loss and hope. Though his pockets were empty and his pride bruised, he carried with him a newfound understanding. He resolved that this would not be the end of his story, but rather the beginning of a wiser, more deliberate approach to his work. The ripple effect of a lesson. Santiago's fall and the elderly merchant's advice would come to shape not only his own life, but also the lives of others in the village. The tale of the broken eggs and the merchant's wisdom began to circulate among the villagers, each person drawing their own lessons from it. For Santiago, it marked a turning point, a moment when failure transformed into growth and the foundation of a timeless proverb was laid. Chapter 3: A Change in Approach. That night, Santiago sat before the warm glow of his fireplace, the soft crackle of burning logs filling the silence of his modest home. The day's events played over in his mind like an unwelcome melody, each memory bringing fresh pangs of regret. He stared at the empty basket beside him, once the vessel of his daily livelihood and now a symbol of his misfortune. The elderly merchant's words echoed in his thoughts: "Never put all your hope, effort, or trust into one thing alone. Diversify, and you will find resilience in the face of misfortune." At first, Santiago had dismissed the advice as a simplistic response to his plight. But as he reflected deeper, he realized the wisdom within it. Reimagining the routine. By dawn, Santiago had resolved to change his ways. Instead of following the same routine that had left him vulnerable, he would prepare for uncertainty. He spent the morning gathering materials from his barn: straw, reeds, and twine. With steady hands and newfound determination, he began weaving several smaller baskets. Though the task was time-consuming, Santiago approached it with purpose, determined to create a system that would protect him from future mishaps. As the hours passed, Santiago found himself recalling moments from his life when he had placed too much reliance on one thing. His farm's reliance on eggs, his single trusted route to the market, and even his old habit of saving money in a single jar by the hearth. Each memory brought a clearer understanding of the risks he had unwittingly taken. By sunset, for smaller baskets sat before him, their woven pattern sturdy and neat. Santiago felt a sense of accomplishment that went beyond the baskets themselves. He was no longer bound by his old ways, he had taken the first step toward a more secure future. First steps toward change. The next morning, Santiago followed his usual routine, but with a new approach. As he collected the eggs, he distributed them evenly among the smaller baskets. At first, it felt strange to carry multiple baskets, their weight uneven and awkward in his hands. However, as he walked along the familiar path to the market, a sense of reassurance began to settle over him. With every step, he thought about how even if one basket were to fall, the others would remain intact. The fear of another devastating loss seemed distant now, replaced by a quiet confidence in his preparation. As he approached the bustling market square, Santiago felt lighter, as though a burden he hadn't realized he was carrying had been lifted. Resilience in action. At the market, Santiago's new method attracted attention. "Santiago, why the multiple baskets?" a fellow vendor asked with curiosity. Santiago smiled, sharing the story of his mishap and the advice he had received. "It seemed wise to ensure that one small mistake wouldn't cost me everything," he explained. His story resonated with the vendors, many of whom had faced their own challenges in an unpredictable trade. As the weeks turned into months, Santiago continued to refine his approach. Beyond the eggs, he began to think about other aspects of his livelihood. He started planting a wider variety of crops in his small plot of land, beans, tomatoes, and herbs to supplement his income. He also began trading his eggs for flour, cheese, and vegetables from other merchants, reducing his dependency on a single source of income. This diversification brought Santiago more than just financial stability, it brought him peace of mind. Each day, he felt more prepared to face the uncertainties of life, knowing that he had built safeguards against potential losses. Admiration and influence. Word of Santiago's resilience and ingenuity spread throughout the village. Customers admired not only the quality of his eggs but also the wisdom he shared with anyone who asked about his new method. Farmers and vendors began adopting similar practices, weaving multiple baskets and diversifying their own trades. Even the elderly merchant who had offered the advice noticed Santiago's transformation. One market day, he approached Santiago with a knowing smile. "Ah, my young friend," he said, clasping Santiago's shoulder, "you've taken the lesson to heart. Tell me, how does it feel to walk a path of foresight?" Santiago grinned. "It feels secure," he replied. "And it has taught me that change, though uncomfortable at first, is necessary for growth." The merchant nodded in approval. Remember, the lesson of the baskets extends far beyond eggs and markets. It is a way to approach life. Spread your efforts, your hopes, and your trust wisely, and you will build a foundation that can weather any storm. A new way of living. Santiago carried these lessons into every corner of his life. He began saving his earnings in multiple places, some in a small pouch hidden in his barn, some with the village's trusted money keeper. He improved his farm's irrigation system, ensuring a more consistent water supply during dry spells. With each change, he felt less bound by the fear of failure and more empowered by the possibilities of success. The change in Santiago's approach also transformed how he viewed challenges. No longer did he see failure as a source of shame, instead, he saw it as an opportunity to learn and adapt. His life became a testament to the idea that preparation and flexibility could turn even the harshest setbacks into stepping stones toward a better future. Santiago's legacy. Over time, Santiago's farm flourished. His diversified efforts yielded a steady income, allowing him to improve his home and offer help to neighbors in need. The proverb, "Don't put all your eggs in one basket," became a common saying in the village, a reminder of Santiago's fall and rise. Years later, when young farmers faced challenges, they would seek Santiago's guidance, drawn by his wisdom and the story of his transformation. Sitting under the shade of an olive tree, Santiago would recount the tale of the fall and the lesson it had taught him, ensuring that the wisdom of the baskets would endure for generations. Chapter 4: The Proverb is Born. The years were kind to Santiago. His farm, once modest and vulnerable, became a model of resilience and prosperity. The once rickety coop now housed dozens of hens, and his diversified crops and trade practices made his household one of the most stable in the region. Despite his success, Santiago remained humble, never forgetting the lessons he had learned on the cobblestone streets of the market square that fateful day. Santiago's story of the broken basket and the wisdom it taught him became a cornerstone of his life. he relayed it with conviction to anyone who came to him seeking guidance. His ability to turn personal failure into a universal truth earned him the admiration of his peers. Soon, his story wasn't just shared in his village, it began to ripple outward, carried by merchants, travelers, and tradesmen. From a local lesson to a universal truth. On market days, Santiago often sat under the shade of an olive tree near his stall, his baskets of eggs displayed neatly before him. Villagers and visitors alike would gather around, drawn not just by the quality of his goods, but by the wisdom he freely shared. Señor Santiago, a young merchant once asked, "How did you recover after losing all your eggs that day?" Santiago leaned back, a faint smile on his weathered face. "By realizing the importance of spreading my risks, young man. Life, like a market day, is full of surprises. Some pleasant, others not so much. But if you rely on just one plan, one idea, or one source of hope, a single misstep can shatter everything." His words resonated deeply. Farmers began to follow his advice, planting a variety of crops instead of relying on a single harvest. Merchants diversified their goods, traders sought investments in different ventures, and households saved portions of their income in different forms. Slowly but surely, Santiago's wisdom transformed the way people approached their lives and livelihoods. The merchant's role in spreading the proverb. Among the many visitors to Santiago's stall was the elderly merchant who had first advised him. The merchant, now retired from his travels, took great pride in seeing how his simple advice had transformed Santiago's life. "You've turned a small piece of wisdom into a legacy," the merchant said one day as they shared a meal. "Only because you planted the seed," Santiago replied, raising a toast to his mentor. The merchant, still well connected in trading circles, began sharing Santiago's story during his occasional trips to larger towns. In bustling ports and thriving cities, the story of the farmer who divided his eggs among many baskets became a popular anecdote. Businessmen, sailors, and scholars adopted the principle, applying it to their own ventures and spreading it further across Spain. A proverb takes root. As Santiago aged, his story grew beyond him. The proverb, "Don't put all your eggs in one basket," began appearing in written records, advice columns, and oral teachings. It was repeated by parents teaching their children, by village elders advising their communities, and even by clergy in their sermons. The phrase was no longer just about eggs or baskets, it became a metaphor for life's broader challenges. Investors in Seville used it to explain why they funded multiple trade ships instead of a single venture. Farmers in Valencia cited it when they diversified their crops. Students in Salamanca referenced it as they pursued multiple skills to secure their futures. Santiago's own village became a hub for those seeking to understand the origins of the saying. Travelers would visit his farm, eager to meet the man behind the wisdom. Santiago, always welcoming, would share his story with the same sincerity and warmth, emphasizing that it wasn't the fall that defined him, but how he rose afterward. The farmer's enduring legacy. In his later years, Santiago often reflected on how a single moment of misfortune had shaped not only his life, but the lives of countless others. What had once seemed like a personal failure had become the foundation of a universal truth. One summer evening, as Santiago sat on his porch, watching the sunset over his flourishing farm, a group of young villagers approached him. They had been tasked with composing a collection of local wisdom to be shared with the next generation. "Señor Santiago," one of them began, "we'd like to include your proverb. It has guided so many of us, and we believe it should be remembered forever." Santiago nodded, his heart swelling with pride. "It's not my proverb," he replied. "It belongs to all of us now. But if it can help even one person avoid the mistakes I made, then it has served its purpose." The villagers wrote down his story in great detail, ensuring that future generations would know not only the words of the proverb, but the man and the journey behind it. They included the lesson in their schools, their meetings, and even in festive songs sung at the market. An eternal lesson. Santiago passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78. His funeral was attended by people from all walks of life, farmers, merchants, travelers, and scholars, each of whom had been touched by his wisdom. They carried with them baskets of flowers, a symbolic tribute to the man whose simple yet profound insight had changed so many lives. Long after Santiago's passing, the proverb continued to thrive. It crossed borders, languages, and cultures, becoming a fundamental piece of human wisdom. From humble beginnings in a Spanish village, it grew into a global truth, reminding people to prepare for uncertainties and to find strength in diversity. The story of Santiago and his baskets remains a testament to the power of resilience, reflection, and sharing lessons born from hardship. It is a story of how even the smallest moments, when coupled with wisdom, can create ripples that transform the world. Epilog, a legacy that endures. Santiago's final years were marked by peace, reflection, and a profound sense of fulfillment. His once small and fragile village had grown into a bustling community, thriving with activity and innovation. Fields stretched wide with diverse crops, traders came from distant lands to barter their goods, and the market square buzzed with a vibrant energy that reflected the prosperity of its people. At the heart of it all was Santiago, a man whose simple yet transformative wisdom had guided the village's journey toward resilience and stability. Santiago's farm remained a symbol of his teachings. No longer just a chicken coop and a few fields, it had evolved into a flourishing estate with a variety of crops, livestock, and even a small orchard. Visitors from neighboring villages, curious to learn from the man whose name had become synonymous with practical wisdom, would arrive regularly. Santiago greeted them warmly, often offering them a meal and sharing stories about his life. "You see," he would tell them, gesturing to his farm, "it wasn't the eggs or the baskets that made the difference. It was the lesson they taught me, to adapt, to prepare, and to never take stability for granted." A teacher to the next generation. The younger villagers held Santiago in high regard, treating him as both a mentor and a beloved elder. Many sought his advice when starting new ventures or navigating challenges. Whether it was a farmer considering new crops, a merchant planning to expand his trade routes, or a young couple dreaming of a family, Santiago always found time to listen. He encouraged them to think beyond their immediate needs and to plan for the unexpected. "Life," he often said, "is like planting a field. You can't control the rain or the sun, but you can prepare the soil and choose a variety of seeds. That way, no matter what happens, something will grow." His words became a source of comfort and inspiration. In moments of doubt or difficulty, villagers would recall Santiago's lessons and find renewed courage to face their trials. Parents began teaching their children the proverb, ensuring it would endure for generations. A proverb that traveled far. By this time, Santiago's story had reached far beyond the village. Traders carried it to distant cities, where it took root in bustling marketplaces and ports. Scholars in Salamanca reference the proverb in their writings, applying its principle of diversification to education and philosophy. Even sailors setting out on treacherous voyages adopted the saying, ensuring they prepared for contingencies before embarking on their journeys. Santiago often marveled at how far his story had traveled. Letters arrived from far-off places, written by people who had heard of his wisdom and wished to thank him. "I never thought," he once confided to his closest friend, "that a simple misstep on a cobblestone would lead to something so enduring." The final days of a wise farmer. As Santiago grew older, he spent more time reflecting on his life. He often sat on the porch of his farmhouse, watching the sun set over his fields. He took great joy in the laughter of children playing nearby, the hum of the market in the distance, and the sight of his farm thriving under the care of his family. One evening, as a group of villagers gathered to celebrate the harvest, Santiago was invited to share a few words. Though his voice had grown softer with age, his words carried the same clarity and warmth that had guided the village for decades. "My friends," he began, "life is full of lessons, many of them learned through hardship. What matters most is how we use those lessons to grow, not just for ourselves, but for those who come after us. I may have stumbled all those years ago, but that stumble taught me how to walk with purpose. I hope you all continue to walk with purpose, too." The crowd erupted in applause, and Santiago's heart swelled with pride. He knew that the wisdom he had shared would live on long after he was gone. A peaceful farewell. Santiago passed away peacefully in his sleep a few months later, surrounded by his family. His death was a moment of deep sorrow for the village, but it was also a celebration of a life well lived. People from all walks of life came to pay their respects, bringing flowers, baskets, and letters of gratitude. The villagers organized a memorial in his honor, planting an olive tree in the center of the market square. Beneath it, they placed a plaque engraved with the words, "Don't put all your eggs in one basket." A lesson from Santiago, whose wisdom taught us to thrive. The tree grew strong and tall, its branches providing shade to traders, farmers, and travelers who stopped to rest beneath it. It became a gathering place for storytelling, ensuring that Santiago's legacy remained alive in the hearts of all who visited. A beacon of hope and resilience. Santiago's story became more than just a tale of a farmer and his eggs. It became a metaphor for resilience, adaptability, and the power of learning from mistakes. Villagers carried his teachings with them wherever they went, sharing his wisdom with new communities. Generations later, Santiago's name was still spoken with reverence. His farm, now maintained as a historical site, attracted visitors who sought inspiration in his life. Scholars wrote about him, artists painted his story, and families continued to pass down the proverb as a guiding principle for navigating life's uncertainties. Through it all, Santiago's legacy endured, not just as a farmer or a storyteller, but as a symbol of the enduring human spirit and the transformative power of wisdom. His life reminded people that even the smallest moments can lead to the greatest lessons, and that resilience, when paired with humility and foresight, can change the world.